Joining me live now is Liberal MP Tim Wilson. Tim Wilson, thanks for your time this morning. Now, I know we're not calling this just yet, certainly not a trend. Why do you think the gap has closed, though?
I think there's been a range of factors, but obviously it's because what we've done in a united way is actually focused on the core message for the Australian people about what the government is delivering. And the reality is the government has got a long record of achievement now over really now nearly 2 years since its re-election. I think that's resonating on the ground in terms of jobs. But the critical thing is that I think we've got a clear understanding amongst the Australian people of the choice that's ahead. The choice ahead for the Australian people, the next election, will be a contest between Malcolm Turnbull and the government he leads versus Bill Shorten and the government that he wants to lead. And the choice is between whether we continue to build Australia's future, create opportunity for future generations of Australians, or what we're seeing from Bill Shorten, which is to raid the piggy bank to spend around today and not build the future that this country greatly needs.
It's no longer a choice between a banking royal commission or otherwise. Now, you're a free-speaking backbencher. Your thoughts with the luxury of hindsight? Wrong to delay it?
Well, when you judge utopia against reality, reality will always come out short. The reality is the Banking Royal Commission is exposing things that none of us knew was the case, and that includes, frankly, Labor, as well as many people in the finance sector who thought that this Royal Commission was unnecessary. The reality is, by doing a slow, calm and methodical approach to an inquiry, setting up a permanent inquiry under the House of Representatives, giving regulators more powers, and of course what has been done with the Royal Commission, which isn't just to focus on the banks but to focus on the entire financial service sector. We're capturing things that aren't just the banks, but we're also capturing the misconduct or misbehaviour of other organisations, including most spectacularly last week AMP. Had we gone with the original proposal that Bill Shorten and his back-of-the-envelope campaign wanted, we wouldn't have captured things like AMP. I mean, to give Labor some degree of credit, their back-of-the-envelope assessment of how they were going to do a Royal Commission was more expensive than their plan for the NBN when they announced that. But it was still too narrowly focused, and the trade-off is we wouldn't have captured other things in the financial service sector as we now are under the government's plan.
You keep saying... Yeah, you keep saying back of an envelope and we didn't want to go with Labor's plan, but it's not like they put out a plan and you started working away at yours for the next year. You said it was unnecessary, it would be damaging, this is your party. I'm just trying to, without, and you've made your point there on what you think of Labor's plan and what's been uncovered, but surely you can also say, yes, delaying it in hindsight wasn't a great option.
Well, I think what the government's done in terms of implementing a slow process of reform, we've given more powers to regulators. We've also had the inquiry run by the House of Representatives has delivered a certain degree of focus. But yes, clearly the Royal Commission has had its place, and that Royal Commission, not just into banks, as our opponents would want, but into the financial services sector, is outlying a huge number of problems that we didn't think existed or didn't know existed. That includes the Labor Party, that included the government, that included people in the financial sector, including, frankly, financial journalists who have even been commenting a certain degree of shock. So I think we're all surprised at what's being revealed, and there may be more to come.
What about a compensation plan? That doesn't need to wait, does it? Surely one could be looked into now, because some of these people simply get paid back the money. We've heard in some circumstances their lives financially are ruined, though.
Well, we've heard the headline stories. We've got to get to the bottom of how deep and challenging some of the problems are. But of course, when banks take away money from people inappropriately, they're actually engaging in taking people's property rights. And as you know, I'm somebody who's strong on property rights. When the banks take away people's money that they didn't earn, it should always be repaid. Now, they should be doing that directly. Frankly, there shouldn't be a need for a compensation scheme, because they should understand directly their sense of responsibility. If they're not prepared to do that, then I think we've got to leave all options on the table.
I want to ask about the budget. It's not too far off. There's an interesting juggle here, I suppose. It's coming down to how much you boost the budget bottom line versus the income tax cut. What's the more urgent priority, do you think?
Well, it's the wrong assessment to say one comes necessarily at the expense of the other. We have to keep investing to build Australia's future. We also have to make sure that we're being fiscally prudent. And you can't do one straight at the expense of the other, because if you don't have a growing economy, you're not going to be able to prepare the budget, and the other way around. But I want to make it clear that I'm very strong on making sure that we have prudent spending and we're doing everything to rein in the deficit because we've already got a plan to honour it by 2021, but we need to do everything we can to try and achieve it as quickly as possible because Australia needs to make sure that it's prepared for external economic shocks which can come along. And the reality is because Labor blew all our chances at any sense of fiscal prudence back in the GFC. The options and the levers Australia now has to respond to global economic shocks is limited. The best thing we can do to prepare ourselves for economic shocks is to make sure that we cut back spending, we make sure that we drive tax reform, and we also pay down the debt as quickly as possible.
Do you think that measure, that if you went to the next election having improved what your future surplus is going to be, rather than a bigger income tax cut, that can still be a vote winner?
Well, I think making sure we can deliver a credible surplus is actually critical to our credibility with the Australian people. That's why we've taken a position about when we think we can deliver it. We've worked towards it. The numbers are looking healthy and on trend, but we're not there yet. But I think making sure we do so is going to be very important. But again, it's not this trade-off between one and the other. If you don't deal with issues around bracket carry and tax, then you won't get the economic activity to pay the tax revenue, to pay down and to reduce the deficit and then eventually pay down debt. If we don't invest in infrastructure to build Australia's future, you're not going to be able to turn around and create the economic opportunities to get the tax revenue, to reduce the deficit, to pay down debt. So it's a difficult balance, but I'm sure the government's got it right.
Couple of weeks to go before we find out what the balance is. Finally, a recent controversy in your state. Young Liberals wanted to debate gay conversion therapy. The motion was pulled by Michael Kroger. Now, you're a passionate advocate for same-sex marriage. You were married to Ryan, your partner, just last month. Also passionate about free speech, though. Where do you sit on this?
Well, there's no ambiguity where I stand on this. Gay conversion therapy, frankly, I basically see it as a form of child abuse. I don't think it's acceptable. I won't stand for it, and I'll oppose it. But the motion is no longer on the agenda. The issue is dealt with, and as far as I'm concerned, we move on. But anybody who ever wants to speak to me about the tragedies and the horrors of this type of, well, it's not therapy. It's a process of trying to get people to suppress who they are and live their lives, and it only leaves a tale of ruin behind it. People may not be aware that in the United States there was a church called the Exodus Church which tried to run these processes for years. And a couple of years ago, actually, a faith-based group who was running them turned around and said that this process doesn't work, and all they want to do is extend their apologies to people who they tried to change, recognising that it had no legitimacy.
Have you spoken to any of the proponents of it to say why it shouldn't be brought up? One was apparently linked to Kevin Andrews.
No, I haven't, and I wouldn't cast any aspersions that it's directly linked to anybody. Those people can answer for themselves.
All right. Tim Wilson, always appreciate your time.
Thank you.